Hello and welcome to another edition of the Talking City podcast with myself, Alex James, and our chief city writer, Simon Bajkowski. Simon, happy Monday. On the back of one of the most anticipated games of the season, probably when the fixtures come out every year, and it did not transpire to be the most inspirational game we've ever watched of our lives.
It was awful, wasn't it? It was really bad. And I say this, I tweeted towards the end of the first half, I was like, I cannot believe that City Leicester is not going to be the worst game of football I've watched in the Premier League this week. But it was true. It was just like two teams who had so little about them. And the most galling thing for City is that, like, you could see how bad United were, and United had the better chances, and United finished stronger, and United ended up probably being more disappointed not to win it. I think the home defeat to United is probably the worst defeat of the season. I think that result might have been worse than that defeat.
Yeah, performance-wise. Why? So I wasn't at the game, but I was watching it at home. Why? It felt from almost the first minute a bit pre-season-ish, a bit as if
testimonially.
They come on the end of as if both teams had played, 10 games in the previous 25 days, which obviously they hadn't. And sometimes you do get these games where United are sitting in that 5-4-1 or low block and City are trying to play through, and you have a bit of a tactical standoff, I guess.
Yeah.
It didn't even really feel like that. It just felt bereft of quality.
Yeah, there was a lot of sort of United defenders passing the ball to City midfielders in their own half, City midfielders then doing nothing with it and it petering out before it got towards kind of troubling Onana. It was just really bad. Pep said afterwards that his players weren't in the right positions to receive the ball and then to accelerate the game, so the tempo wasn't there from City, which is fair enough. But then when you kind of consider the personnel, it's kind of a bit worrying that was the case.
Yeah, because you had that midfield that he packed with experience, and those, I know Gundogan's obviously been away, but those three players have played for a long time under Pep. You would think, automatically they should know the ethos or the rough game plan off the top of their head without needing the managers to come out afterwards and say, you're all standing in the wrong position. Unless maybe they were trying to force something to happen and they saw the game was drifting a bit and they wanted to impact. And I know Bernardo Silva was sort of tasked with helping out Matheus Nunes as well, so that obviously impacts him positionally. But it is a bit disconcerting when the manager comes out afterwards and says, everyone was standing in the wrong place.
Yeah, and I think, it was quite a revealing press conference from Guardiola afterwards, but one of the things he did say was like, we prepared for a kind of specific concept to play United, and I'm not necessarily sure that transpired. And so then they were maybe a bit lost as to, do we keep going with this or do we adapt? And, in previous seasons, they've been a lot better at adapting. But it does all add into the wider kind of negative point, not to be too down, but I feel like we kind of need to be too down because, like, it is really bad and bad enough that they might not make the top five. But, they won at Bournemouth with pretty much the same team.
Yeah.
And Pep was absolutely delighted afterwards and sort of suggested that he had his players back and his team back. And then they beat Leicester in midweek. And everyone keeps saying that, City are back now. They've won 2 in a row. So City are, back to... And you watch that game and you think they're so far off anywhere where they need to be. And you look at these last 3 games, Leicester is difficult to take anything from it because Leicester was so bad. Bournemouth, they were really bad in the first half, very good in the second half. United, they just weren't good. So that's 1 good half out of 6 in the last 3 games, which does not give you any confidence whatsoever that they will get enough points in the last 7 games to finish in the top 4 or 5.
Yeah, I actually thought it was quite telling because usually after a win, Pep Guardiola sometimes is, I didn't think it was great. And sometimes when they lose, he's, that was brilliant from us. We did it. We did everything I wanted. It was quite telling, I thought, after Bournemouth that he was so effusive in his praise for that second half showing. And as you say, picks pretty much the same team, or might have even been the same team, I'm not sure, for the United game. And then they're so far off the pace against, let's not forget, this isn't United of old. This is, to all intents and purposes, a mid-table mediocrity side, if that.
Yeah, I mean, they were 14th when they kicked off and looked like a team in 14th. And it's that thing of, why can't you do it twice in a row? We're not talking about winning 13 games in a row or 18 games in a row or being as great as the Centurions side. We're just talking about kind of putting bad teams away. And United were crying out to be beaten again at Old Trafford, and City just never looked like doing anything. It was just like a really, really underwhelming performance that made you think, where do they go from here?
Yeah, because obviously they've got Newcastle, who are games in hand. Win one of those, they'll be above City in the table. It's out of City's hands then for top 5.
And the games in hand are Leicester on Monday night, which you would expect them to win. And then I think it's Crystal Palace at home, which you would expect them to win. So that could be, Newcastle 4 points ahead of City with 6 games to go.
The other galling thing, I think, is you see Chelsea and you think, wow, Chelsea have not pulled up any trees this season.
Yeah.
And I know it's only a point at the moment and City may well overhaul them, but it's not as if we're asking, like you just said, we're not asking for huge things from this City team. We're asking them to just be a little bit better than where they are now. And 6, 7, 8 points, and it's a completely different conversation. The teams that they're challenging with, I know Forest have been really, really good this season, but you would expect this City side to have enough about them to compete with the levels that Forest are reaching, for example, and outperform this Chelsea team, which are, they're not a bad side, but they're no one's going to remember this Chelsea team as anything particularly great.
No, I think were you working as well for the pre-season friendly?
Yes.
Against Chelsea. Yes. 4-0 inside like 20 minutes and could have been 8. It was like the gulf between the teams was huge. I don't think it was that much smaller on the opening day.
No.
And then even after Kusanov's start in the home game, City was just so much better. And I think they went above Chelsea that day, and you sort of thought... So, and that's kind of been the story of this season. You kind of think, like, they've been down, but then they get up again, and you think, right, well, they'll at least stay there. You think, right, well, they'll at least stay ahead of Chelsea, and they don't. They'll at least stay ahead of Forest, and they don't, and they'll at least sort of stay in the top 4 or 5, and now they don't look like they will. And, I think it's still very much in their hands. But suddenly, like, Fulham away on the last day of the season does not look particularly like the kind of summer stroll that it usually is. And like the home games, if they beat Aston Villa at home, it will be terrific for their hopes of finishing in the top 4 or 5. But do you think they will beat them? Because Villa are a very good team.
Well,
Bournemouth at home.
Palace
has
been a banana skin in the past as well, hasn't it? So
I think the other one they've got is Wolves, which and Everton away. Like David Moyes was at Old Trafford yesterday. I don't think he'll have been too worried by anything he'd seen. They've just held Arsenal, who are a much better team than City, to a draw. So, City have got a pretty gentle running, but that game against United was about the most gentle game you could ask for, and they never looked like being the best team in it.
Why was it so gentle? Like, why when from both teams really, but from City's more so, because I think United probably, albeit with no real quality, kind of carried out what most of us expected United to do. And it was there for City, wasn't it? And it was there for someone to stamp their authority on, or a bit of physicality, a bit of cut and thrust about it, and it just seemed to pass. It just seemed to pass by. The second half, I thought the first 5 minutes, I thought, oh, here we go. There's a bit of energy now, and they're on the front foot, and they're first to a few second balls, and then it just kind of dissipated again. Yeah,
I mean, like you say, Bernardo having to play kind of right back to help Núñez out, which I'm not sure came across much on the telly, but he was in the defence a lot. Maybe took away slightly, but we just saw nothing from Kovacic, De Bruyne, Foden. Marmoush had a few snapshots. They all had a few snapshots, but there was just nothing concrete ever that was sort of a good move put together. You know, in the way that like the 2 goals they scored at Bournemouth were just like very good team moves, and even Leicester to an extent, but they just didn't do enough, anywhere near enough.
You mentioned De Bruyne then, and that kind of leads us nicely on to sort of the big story pre-match, and still pretty much the big story now, given how that game went. Obviously, calling time on his City career, getting the opportunity to go out when he wants to, which Pep always said would be the case. Just kind of, and you've written a really nice piece actually over the weekend on kind of your impressions of him from having watched him play week in, week out for a number of years. And I think you cited was it Stoke game from a few years ago? But just kind of sum up how great a player he's been for City and what he's kind of brought to this era of, you know, which has been filled with world-class superstars and a world-class manager, and how he's kind of elevated himself to, you know, up there with Guardiola in terms of players who have influenced this team.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been the best, I think. You know, King Kev is one of his names, and he has just been world-class on a different level, like on a different level to Haaland, on a different level to Aguero, on a different level to Silva, to Torre, to Company. He does things that makes your jaw drop when you're watching the game, because every pass he's a player that has never been cautious. That's like the fun thing about him. He will always take the risky option in order to try and force something to happen, and that is great and is what people love to see. He has, you know, he doesn't look like a footballer, is the nicest way to put it. You know, he goes bright red after 2 minutes of running. He's not got the most athletic frame. Kind of like gives hope to everyone. But at the same time, as soon as the ball touches his feet, you're like, no, it looks like everyone can do what he does, but actually nobody can do what he does. I think you sort of add in the fact that he seems quite a nice guy to everyone. There's not particular edge to him off the pitch, and it's just very, very hard for anyone to dislike him.
Yeah.
But like, especially for City fans, he's made Manchester his home. He has stayed. He was the £60 million reject, of course, and has been, you know, one of the greatest players that will ever be seen in England.
I think, I mean, I've watched him, I don't know, maybe a dozen times live. And for me, when I first watched David Silva play, it was only kind of when I first watched him live, I really appreciated how, actually, David Silva is a lot better than I gave him credit for from afar.
Yeah.
With De Bruyne, there's just an obvious brilliance about him. And yes, he scored some great goals, but the quality of pass, the weight of pass, the decision making, and how he can do all that in a split second in full flight.
Yeah,
I just find that incredible. And I was watching a few of his highlights ahead of this pod, and I think it was the Villa game that when City came from 2 down to win the title.
Yeah, that assist.
Yeah, and he drives in to win that ball. I can't remember who the Villa defender is, but De Bruyne makes that ball his. Yeah, and he drives past this man, and then he puts it on a plate for Gundogan.
Yeah.
He could do it.
And it's so delicate, the ball. Yeah. Having like run full pelt to intercept and sort of get the ball. Like you say, it's so hard to be able to have that deftness when you've got the all-out power acceleration.
Yeah, and that kind of typifies, I guess, my sort of impressions of his all-round game, because he puts, I mean, how many good balls does he put into the box? He's put on a plate for striker after striker with either a whipped cross or a through ball. And that takes some skill in itself, but to kind of marry those characteristics with doing things in full flight is probably what puts him above maybe all the kind of creative midfield players of,
I think,
certainly
so.
Of his generation, maybe of the Premier League.
I mean, like, he's fastest to 100 assists by 53 games or something. You know, I think if he hadn't had injuries, I think he'd have caught gigs up in a lot fewer games. Holds the record for joint most assists in a season, and I think he was robbed in that sense. There's one assist that the Premier League didn't give him that they have since shown in their best assists highlights package. Right. But
level with irony.
Level with Thierry Henry. in a season where the finishing at City was so bad. So he should have had 30 assists then. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to disparage any other player, but I think it's people love David Silva, and he was a wonderful player. But like you say, you kind of have to appreciate how he made City tick. He was such an artful, graceful player, but there's always been a rawness about De Bruyne that is quite kind of like guttural and really speaks to everyone and makes the game better.
What next for De Bruyne? What next for City? Is the obvious solution is, well, I guess before the start of this season, the obvious solution was play Foden in the De Bruyne position.
Yeah.
You could argue Nico O'Reilly's position is that position. They can go and sign, and I'm sure they will go and sign another attack-minded midfielder. How do you see City attempting to fill the De Bruyne-shaped hole?
Yeah.
I realise he's not been the...
I think it's important to say that, the decision was taken by the club. So it's not that De Bruyne has decided to leave. It's that the club have told De Bruyne, we will not be renewing your contract, which suggests that the club no longer believe De Bruyne can offer what he could. It takes one of the highest earners off the wage book completely. Same for Walker. So, there's a huge amount of headroom suddenly for a wage bill that was getting a bit heavy. They like Florian Wirtz from Leverkusen a lot, and he would be a very good signing for them and a very Pep signing. And they've had a lot of success with players from the Bundesliga, not least Kevin De Bruyne. And so I think that is the way they will go in terms of De Bruyne. Got interest from the US, got interest from Saudi.
Is it going to be one? Is there a chance he stays in Europe and plays for whoever that I can't remember?
I mean, I don't know if a third option is just not playing.
Yeah, maybe.
Does he need to play? The thing is, he basically sacrificed his City career for the treble. Played 2 months with a battered hamstring.
One hamstring, yeah.
And he's never been the same since. And he's got so many minutes in his legs, and you just kind of think, would he go anywhere? Because the other interesting thing with De Bruyne is that sort of, you sort of liken him to Rooney. And as Rooney got older, he steps back, and everyone steps back. And Pep's never said that about Kevin. He said he's not got the defensive abilities to play back. So he's kind of gone forward. You saw at Old Trafford, he kind of played up front.
False nine, yeah.
But you still feel like a playmaker is his best position. Like, you do lose something by just having him up front. So it's whether he would want to go, to a lesser league, because he's a guy who's always played at the highest level. And we've seen even with Belgium taking a step back in the last year or so, he's been furious about it.
Yeah.
Is he prepared to go somewhere where he might have to shout at his teammates because they're not what he's used to and things like that? And where will he play? That's the other thing. So I would expect him to go somewhere, the US probably over Saudi, but it wouldn't surprise me if he just kind of said enough's enough, because he's had an amazing career as is. He's won everything you could win, and he is a smart guy, so he won't struggle after football.
Yeah, I wonder, the World Cup is the only thing I think that might tempt him into into carrying on. But
but then maybe this season is a reminder, because this season's been sad, because he's been a shadow of himself. And Belgium have been a shadow of what they were 4 years ago. So does he
this is a Belgium team that isn't going to win the World Cup unless they have.
Does he want to go for a really sad farewell where he's nothing like he was and they're nothing like he was and they go out in the groups? Maybe, but I don't know.
You don't get the impression either that some people would want to go to Saudi Arabia, A, for the money, B, for the kind of gravitas. Same, a little bit similar with the MLS. You're kind of going for the American Hollywood, wherever it might be, New York. You don't really get the sense that De Bruyne as a kind of person is all that bothered about, being a big fish in a small pond and having that that amount of sort of visibility, or that it doesn't strike you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know him. I say you know him. It's not like you're going around his house for tea every night, but you've obviously seen him in behind the scenes and sort of thing. He doesn't strike me as the sort of person who wants to necessarily go and seek the limelight in America.
Yeah, he's very, very dry and has no interest in being famous as such. But, he's got a lovely wife and kids, and he said last year that I think his wife might like an exotic adventure when referencing Saudi.
Does she not realise she's been in Manchester?
Does she not realise she's married to Kevin De Bruyne? You could see the US being a nice lifestyle change. And, De Bruyne appreciates sports and great sportsmen, and there's a hell of a lot of them in America. You've obviously got kind of Messi and David Beckham in Miami, but you've also just got all the basketball players and American footballers, and it would be an easy way to sort of have ringside, courtside seats for a lot of those games for a few years if you fancied it.
Yeah, well, you've sold it to me. I can tell you that for nothing. We were outside. Not we as in you or I, but the Manchester Evening News was outside Old Trafford on Sunday and got the thoughts of some City supporters on King Kev, so we can hear a few of those now.
So, Kevin De Bruyne, was that a shock when you heard that news?
No, not really. I mean, he's been struggling, I think, for the past couple of seasons with all his injuries. He's not played much this season. And then when he has been back fit for injuries, he's been always on the bench. It's weird that he's not come back onto the pitch, and you're thinking, well, why is he not playing if he's sat on the bench? He's coming on for 10, 15 minutes, and I think his playing time's not been getting any better. So it seems about right that he's time to call an end for him, really.
But that doesn't take away from everything he's done for City over the last 10 years.
No, he's been brilliant. I mean, it's chalk and cheese when we play without him.
Yeah.
He just brings that whole midfield together, and some of the passes he plays and some of the balls he puts in that box he's irreplaceable.
Is there a best moment that you've sort of picked out over the last few days, or a best goal, best pass that you can think of?
The one for me, and the one where we won it at played in Aston Villa to win the league.
Mm-hmm.
That one was up there. A brilliant ball when we played Stoke City a couple of years ago when he played it through to Leroy Sané. Just some of the passes and some of the he just sees things that other players don't. It's just unreal.
Do you think he can be replaced? And if he can, who would be able to do that?
I don't know, but he is just one of a kind. He does things that other players can't. So I don't know just yet. We'll have to find out.
So where does Kevin De Bruyne rank for you in players you've seen play for City?
He's one of the best. There's him, David Silva. My granddad showed me videos of Colin Bell, but Kevin De Bruyne, he's
amazing.
Yeah, he's amazing. Absolutely, best player. I'd go as far as saying best Premier League midfielder by a long way.
And he's your favourite player?
Yeah, by a mile. He's the best. He's got a good. He can pass. He can shoot. He can. He's just amazing.
Yeah, he is. Best midfield Premier League scene.
Do you think City can replace him?
We said we couldn't replace Aguero. We said we couldn't replace Yaya. We've replaced world-class players already. I'm pretty sure Pep's already got somebody in mind. I'd like to see Florian Wirtz there, but it'll be sad to see him go. But we'll be there against Bournemouth, won't we, to wave him off? So it's hard to replace the irreplaceable, but I'm pretty sure we'll have something in the pipeline ready.
And last one, do you both have a favourite goal, a favourite assist that he's made?
Wow.
The one against Chelsea where he swerved it in it, and then Foden scored a banger.
There's so many. He could split a defence in two. His through balls were lethal. He could whip across like nobody else I've ever seen, and he could. I think Haaland bagging as many goals as he's bagged so far. De Bruyne has not been in the team this much this season, and I think that's had an impact on how many goals Haaland scored, and I think that's just because of how good De Bruyne is. So yeah.
Kevin De Bruyne, where does he stand in the list of all-time greats?
Well, for me, you know what I mean, it's like all the time I followed City, you know what I mean, he's number one.
Yeah, because there's that sort of debate of where does he stand compared to Colin Bell, and a lot of us haven't seen Colin Bell, but
No, you know what I mean, it's like too young.
yeah,
It's so no, just from what I've seen, you know, obviously, you know, he's I mean, he's got to be right up there, you know what I mean, with kind of like the all-time greatest, like, you know, like at City. But for me, you know what I mean, it's like midfield-wise, you know what I mean, it's he's the best what we've ever seen, you know, just in front of, like, you know, Merlin, David Silva.
do you think the time is right for him to go, or could he have gone on another year?
Yeah, I think even the way the seasons went this season, you know, he could maybe have left last season, you know, but that hindsight's a great thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I think now's the right time, and I think it's America. That's where he goes.
Do you think City can replace him, or is it a case of getting other players to do bits of what Kevin De Bruyne can do?
Yeah, well, we have this every time now, you know. I mean, it's like when we've got like a great player, like so when Aguero left, you know, came and replace him. Yes, we did. You know, David Silva. Yes, we can't replace like for like. You know, but you know, somebody will come in. You know, I mean, it's like who it is, and like who knows. You know, I mean, I don't think there's anybody at the club at the moment, you know, that can take that mantle on. That's for sure. So I think the checkbook's got to be opened again.
Yeah, if you're going to replace Kevin De Bruyne, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. I think you're going to be looking at like probably 100 million or something. It's a little bit more than I've got, you know, but yeah.
And how nice were we outside before the derby? How nice would it be tonight or today to see De Bruyne come on and just one last time run the show at Old Trafford?
Yeah, it'd be phenomenal. And as well, you know, I don't know if anybody realises, you know, but it was either today or yesterday that Pep's mum passed away.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, I think it'd be quite emotional in there as well, because I would imagine the players would like pick up on that as well. And as you say, for like Kevin, it's so yeah, you know, I mean, it's like any victory here, you know, I mean, it's great no matter what.
So Kevin De Bruyne, where does he stand in the all-time list of City players?
He's got to be up there, hasn't he? You know, we've had some great players going back. You got the Summerbees, you got the Bells, and then you come through. Had a little bit of a depression with people like Jamie Pollock, but now you look at it, he's just an absolute god, isn't he? He's the way that he walks the game, the way he looks at stuff, the way he sees passes that nobody else sees. He's up there. He's the best player we've ever had. No word of a lie. And that's no disrespect to people like Aguero and Torre. He's just amazing.
Did you expect this decision?
Did I expect it? I think there was always that element of, is it coming? Is it coming? This season, he's been injured quite a lot. We haven't seen the best of him. And I think the club have just said, do you know what? Let's win the FA Cup this season and let him go. And that's what we want. Win the cup for him.
Well, obviously the cup is the big one. What sort of reception do you think he'll get between now and the end of the season from the supporters?
It will be the Kevin De Bruyne leaving party every single game. It will. We cannot underestimate what he's done for us as a club, what he's done for the team, and the way he's carried us a lot of the time. It'll be a tremendous miss and a tremendous loss for us as a team. But, you know, everything has to come to an end at some point in time, and this is it.
Who would you like to see sort of take up that? No one can replace him, but who can go close?
I think Pep said you can't replace him. You can just get somebody in to try and do a similar role. You know, if you're going to replace him, it's going to cost a huge amount of money. They're talking about Verts coming across. I really don't know, but whoever comes across has got some massive shoes to fill.
So that was the verdict of some of the City fans on De Bruyne. Probably hard to disagree with any of those sentiments, and it completely unsurprising that everybody was talking up how much they've enjoyed playing with him, how much they've enjoyed watching him, and how much they've enjoyed watching him play. And he will, just before we sort of end, he will go down as, you know, that statue's going to be built, isn't it? If it's not been commissioned already, it surely is in the process.
Yeah. The only other thing is, you know, do you sort of just split the Colin Bell? Do you name a stand after him? Do you have do you name the East stand after him maybe, and then have him facing Colin Bell? Have the two best players? Probably not. It'll probably be a statue, but you know, I'm sure the club will be looking to make a permanent tribute for him. because he is in the top 2, if not the top 1 of the best City players ever.
And on that note, we shall end it for this edition of the Talking City podcast. We will, of course, keep you updated throughout the week and all the build-up to Crystal Palace on Saturday lunchtime through all our usual channels. And Simon will be back with Joe Bray on Friday to preview the Palace game. And we will see you all then. Thanks for listening and watching.